Today we have Dean Handrinos from Triad RF.
Our VP of Business Development, one of the things he told me was there's pricing, there's specs, there's a lot of dimensions to an order. A big weighing factor here is they want to work with somebody that they can trust.
I'd like to commend you on your commitment to actually building real customer relationships, not just a marketing slogan.
I just have never gotten the feeling that you guys are only out for number one. If you can go into it with that approach, trust first, people first, but obviously with product innovation, I think it'll go a very, very long way. Hey, everybody, welcome to the 5th episode of the RF Frontiers podcast. It's hard to believe they're starting to stack up. Today we have Dean Handrinos from Triad RF, and of course I am joined with my partners, John Wallace and Ariel Carlson today. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Dean, it's great to have you on today. We talked a little bit a couple weeks ago, and I think you've got a fascinating backstory, and you're really interested in helping the community of the manufacturing community succeed and sharing your lessons. So we're really excited to talk to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So why in heck did you think you wanted to come on and spend time with us? I think that's really the crazy part. You jumped on this, Dean, and I found that to be fascinating. I really do. I really do. You were just like, I'm in. Let's do this.
One of the reasons I kind of was pretty eager to do this because I found myself in a certain position maybe 10, 12 years ago, working at a company and having a boatload of ideas, and there was a lot of limitations to being able to carry out those ideas. So, one of the main reasons I kind of jumped into this was because if there was anything I could share for an RF engineer or somebody interested in doing their own thing eventually, to kind of share some successes, mistakes, how the process goes, and hopefully help out anybody that was in the similar position that has an idea or two, how to vet it, how to realize it, and carry it out for themselves.
So these ideas, were these engineering ideas or business ideas or marketing ideas? What kind of ideas are we talking about?
A little bit of both. In my background, I served in both sales, engineering, and whatever you'd call it, management. And combining all of those things was pretty good for me because you get exposure, being an engineer in the cube, getting, taskmastered by somebody. Sometimes you're exposed to the end use application. Sometimes you're exposed a lot to the why of what you're doing. I had a little bit of a dimension of all three of those things. So a lot of those ideas came from exposure to customers, seeing what they wanted, exposure to engineering, seeing what's possible and what's not, what's practical, what's deliverable, and a little bit of applications work to get a little bit of insight on how you pre-sale, what really kind of piques a customer's interest or solves a problem for them. The idea was for products, but it was informed by those three dimensions in the exposure I've had in the past.
Yep. Well, those are really the important dimensions. Let's get clear. We've stated here in our podcast here before, and it's kind of one of our bedrock motivations is that the RF industry is just all about product and specifications until your eyes and ears bleed.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And obviously they're crucial. You cannot do anything without that. But bringing up the problems and the why and the motivations for what actually helps the customers actually achieve what they want to fix, accomplish, or avoid is what it's really all about. The spec is one of those things, but there's more. And when you realize that there are people on the other end,
for sure,
then you start to realize that there's something more than the specs. And so your attitude in wanting to join us is frankly why Sean and I have wanted you, Sean's been particularly vocal about your story. And I'm inferring that it's largely because of that. You're just coming on here to help the industry, if you will, and help the world in a slightly glorified description of it.
I would go that far, but fine.
So I don't think we mentioned the industry that Dean's in, right? So your company is focused on RF amplifiers, is that right?
Correct. If you boil it down to its most basic premise, small signal in, big signal out. There are many companies out there that specialize. It's almost like a taxonomy of species or whatever the hell they call it. And there are places that specialize in low frequency amplifiers or HF communications. There's also ones that specialize in high power, low frequency amplifiers for EMI testing and all that. Then there's the communications amplifier people. Then there's the millimeter wave and higher frequency stuff. We're sort of in the middle between, let's call it 1 megahertz and 20 gigahertz. So mostly communications.
What I think is fascinating about that is you would think that if somebody said, I have a company that only sells RF amplifiers, I think an outsider would think, well, that sounds pretty specialized. But actually, that's not specialized enough, is what I heard you say, right? I mean, you can have an RF amplifier company that specializes based on frequency range, by application, by power level. And I think that's a really important lesson, right? Because for entrepreneurs out there who think that they think they're specialized, maybe you have to really question, am I as specialized as I could possibly be? Did you set out to create like a niche within RF amplifiers, or did you just think, I'm going to do RF amplifiers generally?
The main driver was noticing that there were certain types of radio communication systems making their way up the chain. And they're called MIMO, MANET radio systems. So a little bit more of an advancement on legacy radio systems. And what's funny is a lot of this stuff is already built into kind of the Wi-Fi routers we're talking to right now. But there's an aerospace defense component of that where mill grade versions of these radios are out there and they're making their way up into the mainstream. And I'm not going to kind of trivialize it by saying, oh, it's like a Wi-Fi router. Use a lot of similar technology, but it's ruggedized. There's different algorithms there to manage communications traffic, and they are way more advanced in certain respects. So that was the first kind of entry.
So your entry, you were really application focused initially. You said, we want to build amplifiers for MIMO specifically.
For that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for people who aren't RF folks necessarily, MIMO is multiple input, multiple output, right? So it's a multi-channel amplifier. Is that what it is?
It's an architecture that uses several transmitters and several receivers. And when an RF signal is propagating, as you know, it's like dropping a couple rocks into a pond and seeing all of those waves kind of radiate or crash into each other, bounce off each other. That's what's happening over the air. When it happens, there are many radios with lots of more than one transmitter and more than one receiver. But where MIMO comes in is a lot of the signal processing that is used to pick up all of those reflections and recombine everything into a coherent received signal. And there's a lot of stuff behind that, but it provides a huge benefit in link margin.
So, and what is for those, and I think about not the ones that are in RF. I've been spending a lot of time on Reddit recently, and there's a lot of people who were exploring RF, students and people who are exploring job changes. So beyond that, so if you would define MANET for us.
It is a kind of mesh network where you're not relying on a point-to-point link that's really good between two radios. You can almost visualize a bunch of nodes being spread around. It's basically the over-the-air version of what would happen, over a wired Ethernet, more or less, where there may not be a good communications link between one node and another directly, but it can pass through 4 to 5 to 6 other radios that are closer to each other, have better link margins, a better quality of connection between them. And that's how you're linking those radios. And then they'll adapt, they'll pass information around to see who's got good signal strength, who's got bad signal strength, and it's pretty advanced. It's more of our customers' wheelhouse, but it's very adaptable and very robust. Yeah, and if you're mentioning Reddit, there's a lot of people playing with that. There's even an open source MANET, more or less, called Meshtastic, which is a consumer grade radio, and people are setting up their networks using that, and it shares a lot of similarities with what these MIMO, well, they aren't MIMO radios, but with the MANET, where it's a self-healing kind of ad hoc network.
Well, you just found another subreddit that I've got to probably find to join. So you talked about the why and helping the customers. I mean, as you get into this, what are some of the biggest challenges that are facing your segment of the market? Since you've defined it pretty well, it's not the Wi-Fi routers; it's really more the defense segment and communications. What are their big challenges?
So in aerospace defense, there are a lot of barriers to entry to get onto a military program, or to be the radio that a given military force would approve to use. And as you all know, there are some kind of monoliths in that industry, and they have all of the connections and the wherewithal to be there and stay there. And there are a couple of smaller, I would say, they're pretty large, but they're smaller than the monoliths, making their way up into the mainstream, not only aerospace defense, but UAV link radios and things of that nature. So they're trying to make their way into the mainstream, and it does require a lot of building up of those capabilities, how to navigate government contracts, how to have the right connections and all of that. But they're getting there.
So UAV is very much a new application area, right? We didn't really have mass, quantities of UAVs 10 years ago. Is that giving amplifier market participants a new opportunity to penetrate that market because it's a new application? I mean, is that what's happening, where traditionally you would have had like a major defense prime dominating it? Now we have new players because UAV is a new application, or no?
I wouldn't say that UAVs or UAS are an old or a new application. They're pretty old.
Okay.
Some of the oldest UAVs are 35 years old, but there's a technology cycle within those vehicles. Probably for the past 15 years, they were using very, very simple radios to send video telemetry back. And those were fine, simple FM type radios. Then they started having the need for a more secure link. I'm sure everybody had read in the Afghanistan or Iraq days where somebody could put up an antenna and watch a video feed for a UAV. So first security came in, and then the radios got more advanced, and these vehicle manufacturers said, well, a couple of things happened. One, cameras got better. So the gimbals started doing higher resolutions, more cameras, an optical, a thermal camera, more cameras per gimbal. And then the data rate for coming out of that camera the pipe got very wide. So then a lot of those manufacturers scrambled to say, wow, we need a much better radio than what we have. And with that comes a long distance, or having to transmit it across a long distance. So an amplified radio or a radio amplifier combo. And that amplifier had to have a level of advancement too.
So your customers for these UAV things, they're primarily the defense primes, right? Not direct to the government. Is that how that supply chain works?
Correct. The vehicle manufacturers would sell to the government, and they would equip the vehicles how the government spec them out, or how they tell them they spec them out, and work.
So in your experience, what's it like to do business with the primes? Is it similar to doing business with the government? Is it easier, harder, different compliance? I mean, what are the challenges in working with the primes?
It's not too hard because there's pockets in those primes that are pretty innovative. So if you're starting a company and you're making a good enough product, there are a lot of, it's not exceptions. They do their due diligence, but I'll use an example. RF engineers started a company and they are really good gizmo. And they got an email from somebody at Harris Corporation that was interested. There's no pile of paperwork to go through in my experience. It's usually, hey, you're meeting what I need. That engineer will work, and their supply chain will work to get you on that vendor list. And even some things that feel like roadblocks or perceived to be roadblocks, like ISO certification, even that's not a barrier, because what they'll do is they'll ask, are you ISO certified? If not, or if yes, they'll check the box. If not, they'll say, hey, here's a supplier survey. Do you have a quality management system? Do you follow common sense when it comes to manufacturing quality, design quality, quality of your measuring performance and all of that? So it's to answer the original question, it's not a very difficult process. Where I found it difficult is there's a wide range of defense primes that have small groups within them that are trying out technology. Maybe they'll buy a handful from you. At a certain point in your existence, once you get those first couple orders, you could do that ad infinitum, serve a 5-piece BAE order or a 20-piece Harris order or a 50-piece ITT order. And that will pay the bills, but then at some point you have to start being strategic and find the larger programs they're on once you've built the goodwill and credibility and work up from there. And that was a challenge we faced early on, let's say our first couple of years. Go after anything and everything. A design comes in or a request to design something comes in. The NRE would fund the development, but then we'd have to think to ourselves, okay, how can we translate this product into a commercial off the shelf and then try to sell it from there? That does get tiring after a while because you're always doing maybe the 1-offs or the 5-offs or the 20-offs or the 100-offs. It gets suck up your resources rather quickly. So at some point, you're going to reach a level of doing that where, you get a little more selective.
But I think what I heard you say is you're not going to just sell 3,000 units to Northrop Grumman out of the gate. The first order is going to be 5.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So everything starts with a prototype, right? So I don't think that's uncommon. My question is, how much of those onesie, twosie, fivesies contribute to turning that into a commodity project? Before we get off of that, I don't want to escape from that too far.
In our small history at Triad, we've used those orders to build the building blocks, to build the engineering prototypes, all of that then we could translate into other designs. Maybe it was a 2.6 gigahertz 50 watt amplifier. And we said, okay, well, if we get this design done, that order has funded the actual deliverable, but then from there on out, we know we can retune this to other bands. So everything kind of builds upon itself from there. But again, it's tough to do because, not tough, but you have to work hard because then you have to use that product and say, what other markets does this touch? And then market the heck out of it.
Interesting. So, yeah, and marketing to a prime, right? That's a tough challenge. I mean, do you have a marketing philosophy? Once you've made that initial sale of, say, 5 units, how do you try to take that to the next level? Do you kind of hope for the best, or is there a campaign that you execute to kind of make that happen?
I think even before that, because what struck me, as you said, that you would have someone on a team from a prime call you and be like, oh, I'm interested in this. Well, how are you even getting to that point?
Right.
Of someone picking
it's like
up
a
the phone
double-edged, it's like a double sales cycle. First to get the initial guy.
Right, the initial
Right.
guy. So what marketing efforts, or how do you go about even just getting someone in a prime to see your product, to give you a call, to say, hey, I'm interested, come show me this?
I think in our industry, we're lucky in a sense that the audience isn't huge. So you do get a lot of bang for your buck from straight up web marketing, AdWords, and all of that.
Traditional marketing.
And good SEO. And there are maybe a handful of publications that those engineers follow. I'm not trying to promote anybody, but Everything RF is a pretty good one because it just, everybody's looking for a one-stop shop in terms of RF components. They're pretty much one of the best ones in my opinion. Ariel, to answer your question, doing that in the beginning definitely allows the email or two from the prime to flow in. The engineering teams there definitely hunt around when they're doing something new. Once you're locked into the BOM, there's such a There's such a critical mass of stuff that goes around that. It's hard to kind of get your piece into it, but they're doing thousands and thousands of projects a year between all of them. If you get in at that time, it's not the hardest. And yes, sometimes it comes in just straight through a web lead.
Yeah, some of those trade magazines, it gets a little spendy, right? There's some of those, not naming any names, but like you say, there's a number of them out there. How do you figure out where your audience is, what they're reading? I mean, is it a gut feeling? Is there data that you rely on to figure out readership? Or do you talk to customers and say, hey, what trade magazines do you read? Or is it just kind of trial and error?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. I mean, through web marketing and through those channels, you get all of the metrics you need out of them. We've done little tricks in the past. I'm sure you guys are aware of. If it's a print ad, you put a custom URL in there. Not Triad RF, but like maybe Triad RF Systems.com, and you'll know they'll only hit that URL if they've seen the ad. And you try your best to figure out where that lead came from if they're over the transom. But yeah, it's just a combination of all of that.
Someday RF Frontiers is going to be one of those sources.
Oh, excellent.
Just saying, when we get this out onto YouTube, we get this out onto social, it's there for life. And that's kind of the beautiful thing. It's there for life for free. It's a more up-to-date and modern format than has existed in the past. And frankly, it's another reason why we're doing it.
Yeah.
That's something that we want to give to the industry as well. Bring them into the current times rather than the 20th century.
Yeah, that persistence is good. I mean, we spent a lot of time, just knowing, when you have a project to do, you're on the web, you're looking around. A little empirical example, I needed an IC to hot swap an amplifier. So to protect the power supply when you just jammed the connector into it. And I see an IC from Analog Devices, and then some applications engineer wrote an app note on what mil standards this chip adheres to, how to implement it, X, Y, Z. I didn't go anywhere else because I saw it on DigiKey, and I was like, "Oh, this is a $7 chip. All right, I'm done." So there's for sure, I think at every level, from the component to the amplifier or sub piece, to the signal generator, to the full system. There's a lot of power in writing out those app notes and just laying out the solution, because that engineer's got it's probably overworked. It's got 50 other things.
Well, I think there's power in education. I mean, really, what Analog Devices has done is they're educating their users and said, hey, you know, we did 3 weeks of research, and so that you can just know that this $7 part is the right one, and you don't have to shop around and say, gee, is there a $5 part, right? Because it just doesn't. It's not worth 3 weeks of research to figure out. Yeah,
exactly.
So,
but some people still do that.
Well, we can't help those people, but
exactly.
I think there is a lot of power in education. I know certainly for our own business, we believe that really strongly. And what role do you think word of mouth has in this? Do you think that certainly there's a place obviously for spending on traditional media, and there's a place for organic social media like Chuck is talking about and we're doing here on our Frontiers. But what about word of mouth? Do you find that your leads come in, friends and family make recommendations, or?
Yeah, for sure. It's a very small world. A gentleman that is now, you know, a graybeard consultant at Triad. I mean, I've been working with him on and off for probably 20 years. In fact, one time he was going for a job that I was leaving. He came in and I'm like, don't come here. and then he eventually worked elsewhere and eventually retired. And not only that, he was also a consultant to a UAV company that was a customer of ours somewhere in the interim. So yeah, I think that's also very, very effective.
I think that's really interesting, because I was thinking about like one of your customers tells his friend, but you're talking about your employees actually have deep networks in the industry, right? Your employees or consultants have. Right. Okay. So word of mouth can be amongst your customers or between employees and customers, especially. It's really interesting too, because you might hire an engineering talent and think, oh, I'm just getting the engineering talent, but actually you're getting their word of mouth network too, right? That's fascinating.
Our industry doesn't network enough.
Oh, for sure.
We just don't network enough. We think that that's a once a year thing at trade shows or 3 times a year thing at trade shows.
People.
I have an intern. I have an intern that worked for me in 2010, and he was an electrical engineering student, and he did some work for me, graduated, went on to get his master's degree, and then was working as an engineer for a UAV company, submersibles actually. We ended up doing business with that company, and then he left, and now he's the COO for a different company in a different state. And lo and behold, we're doing business with that company as well. Coincidence?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
He knew who to call. He knew who he trusted. That's another big thing. Our VP of Business Development, he's taught me so much over the years. And one of the things he told me was, sure, there's pricing, there's specs, there's a lot of dimensions to an order. He's like, a big weighing factor here is they want to work with somebody that they can trust and that they can rely on. Because problems happen with every company. Everybody has their share of RMAs, broke stuff, badly manufactured things. Hopefully it's a small percentage. And key point is, when it goes wrong, will that company be there to support us, and will we be able to turn around that mistake? And I think that's where you can build so much goodwill that cannot be paid for. You know?
Yeah. I mean, you said the key word there, trust, right? I think people they think about it as, oh, sure, you just buy from your friends. But that's not what it's about. It's not about buying from people who are your friends or doing favors. It's not about favors at all. It's about trust, like you said, so that when something goes wrong, that relationship is going to be your backstop. And I think, too, that when you have a trust relationship with somebody, both sides want that to continue. And I think both sides will work hard to make sure that things are right so that relationship continues. Because you don't want to lose that investment you have in maybe a 10-year trust relationship with another engineer. I think it's a really interesting to mention. You know, word of mouth is not just, oh, I want to buy from my friends. It's I want to buy from somebody who I know is going to have my back when the going gets rough.
For sure, for sure.
And aren't those your real
Right.
friends?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's interesting because I think in the old school sales world, there was a belief that you just take this guy out to golf and he'll place an order, right? But golfing is not enough, right? There has to be some like you say, some trust that backs that up.
Sean, I'd like to go back to your point of intercompany word of mouth. Another thing that's a good tip for somebody starting out or in the middle of it at their company. It is essential to foster communication within your customers as well, because once a company gets large enough, or if you're dealing with a large enough company like a prime, they are so distributed. I mean, we've had examples of delivering a custom product to one division of a prime, let's call it, let's say it's in Nevada, and then their North Carolina division kind of is like, who are you guys? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, we're in your vendor system. We've been working with you for years. And they said, oh, look at that. You guys already designed for that division something that we need. So it's definitely, I think in our industry, it's key to, and I try to promote that among anybody in sales engineering. You've got to know your customer in and out, what the program there is, what the program they're working on is, and they're big companies, 500-600 people. How are you reaching out to maybe any other division? And sometimes it just starts with a question. You're there, you're done with that project. Just a simple ask of, hey, are there any similar, business areas that could be interested in this? And that's where you'll get that name.
Same. It's like how it is in DoD.
For sure.
Knowing what branches or what labs are talking to each other.
Yeah.
And making sure to follow those leads or asking for them to connect that and promote yourself within.
I think we found too that when you do a good job with a customer and you really go the extra mile and make them happy, at the end of the project, they almost want to do you a favor. Right? And so you want to wait until you've really delivered and delivered well, and then say, hey, what other labs are working on this?
Yeah.
I've found that as the third parties, so often we started going down this road talking about large companies. It's easy in a company like Spectra Lab or Coaxis or Triad RF for us to talk to each other. It's over lunch. It's, while you're out in the lab. It's while you're out on the shop floor. It's while you might be in a management meeting or something. It's easy. It's a nice, small, contained group. With these larger companies, they're separated by miles and many offices and layers of bureaucracy and management. I found that folks like us can be a tremendous asset in communicating to them within their own company. Yeah. Hey, did you know that such and such is going on here? Or come back, hey, I just wanted to fill you in on this. I've been working with engineering on this, right? Just to keep you up to date, this is what's going on. Share that with the right selective people. You become a trusted, valued resource. And you can do that between labs, between departments, and that sort of thing as a way to grow your trust. And frankly, forget your own needs just to help them. Right back to the beginning of this episode. Just freaking help them.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's interesting too is I think what we've noticed is if you land a win at a really prestigious lab, then you can kind of, if they're a thought leader in the space, you go to talk to other labs. Oh, this fancy lab with all the name drop that other lab, name drop, right? And especially in DoD. There's a little bit of there can be a little bit of interdepartmental or interlab competition there. Oh, I want to do what those guys with all the budget are doing. They're buying the good stuff. I want to buy this. So you can definitely.
Yeah, that's true. Don't you want to be like them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit here. So, we've established Triad RF. You're supplying amplifiers in MIMO MANET space, primarily for defense applications. You get started early, you're designing products, you're finding a way to turn those into more of a standardized, productized offering so that you can begin to take the same benefits to other folks as well. But there's other companies that are trying to do that as well. Oh, yeah. You said that yourself here. how do you differentiate in this space? Because otherwise you're just noise, right?
Yeah. Again, this is personal experience, but it's semi-universal at the start. I strongly believe it really comes through once you get to a certain size. There is there's a bulk that you have to justify with every sale. The upfront work back to the help paradigm, where you could show an early on customer that you're willing to burn, not all your time and energy, but a good chunk of your time and energy, saying, okay, let's lay out the problem. Let's come up with something. Okay, here's a block diagram. Here's a mini proposal outlining how long it's going to take us, this, that, and the other. Your willingness to do that and your willingness to work with the customer is key. A lot of the default behavior, I'll say, from sometimes engineering-oriented companies is, oh, wow, look at their specs. They're not complete. They conflict with lines conflict with each other. They'll immediately discount that and say, this is probably not a good company to be working with. But I always see that as an opportunity, because they're writing a spec like that because they need help. They want somebody to mark that up and shake it down a little bit to come out with something that's practical. Yeah. They say, oh, it's got to have 65% efficiency, but you help them with that part of it. It's a little bit of a free work, but it pays off in the end, in my belief. Hey, you don't know much about amplifiers. We're experts. Listen, the maximum practical deliverable thing is 50% efficiency. If you iterate with them a couple times on that, you end up looking like a hero, because not only did you you got them to a certain point in that project, at least for that subcomponent, and they'll just remember that. And it makes the sale easier at the end of the day, because they will encounter, like you said, Chuck, a competitor maybe that isn't as eager to do that. And it is a balance. You could spend a lot of time doing that and not making the sale, but if you understand your market and know that this customer will yield and maybe what you guys yield together will be beneficial for you in a different variant or something like that, I think it's that upfront willingness. I'm sure you guys have seen it. You'll ask a given place for a component, and sometimes the person, a given sales engineer, will come back, solve the problem, then ask you, what project are you on? What are you looking at long-term to buy this? But that's got to be the secondary ask. You get immediately turned off. You immediately turn off a customer when you make a request, and then the first question that comes back is like, hey, what's your NRE budget? What sort of minimum order quantity are you going to be able to give us? And what's the program name? It's glowing in front of you, that email, like, this person doesn't really want to help you.
Yeah, right. I think too, if you're an engineer and you send out that initial request, and engineers, I think, generally tend to be pretty shy. So you send out that initial request, maybe asking for more technical info, and then you get an email back from a sales guy that says, basically, who's your program manager, right?
Yeah.
It can be a turnoff. Whereas if you come back and really want to provide engineering value, it's like, oh, this guy wants to be my partner.
Isn't that the difference between a missionary and a mercenary?
Yeah.
You immediately switch from helping the customer, as you described, Dean, to, all right, let's talk about what I need now. Are you worth helping?
Well, when you get those emails, it's like, are you worth helping?
Yeah, exactly. It's just not the right approach. Now, one is very short-term thinking. One is very selfish thinking, if you will. We all have to close business. There's no doubt about it. The company needs to survive. It's a function of what's more appealing. There's not a selling process. There's a buying process. Anybody who thinks there's a selling process is a fool. There's only a buying process. Your perspective doesn't matter. It's what are they going through, and how do you get them to trust you? And that means it's not in your time; it's in their time.
Oh yeah.
And their needs.
I wonder too, like there is so much wiggle room in RF in particular on specs. I've lived in RF for a long time, so I don't know if other industries are like this too. But it feels like in RF the specs really are written in pencil, truly. So I wonder if that's something that's unique to our industry, or if other industries have that kind of wiggle room in partnership too. But I know that RF, you need that deep engineering partnership.
I can't speak to other industries, but you're right. There's just such a vast trade space. It has to be discussed, because maybe you won't satisfy one line of a requirement, but if you tweak that a little, you'll blow away and do way better at 7 other lines. And once the customer understands that, it's never a hostile conversation.
Yep.
One thing I've learned about RF specifications is that everything is a trade-off. Mm-hmm. Everything is striking a balance. Oftentimes it's, and amplifiers are a great example. I amplify the hell out of something at the expense of what? Efficiency, noise,
Power
right? So I have to balance these things out. And by the way, that one thing that not enough people talk about is economics. That's always a factor in there as well. And the good engineers don't, but new engineers might not quite think that way. And they think economics is only about budget. It's not. There's an awful lot more to it. But everything we do is that the specs seem to fight each other, if you will, across this entire industry. So everything is a negotiation, and it takes not just book smarts, but also experience and partners like yourself to help us to balance that in this industry. I don't know if it's like that in how many other industries,
I don't know.
Sean? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
I love the phrase trade space. Just speaking for myself, when I'm buying a component that I'm not familiar with or something I haven't bought before, my first question really is, well, what are the trade-offs in buying this thing? And I think if you fill out a web form on a vendor's website and say, please contact me, and they come back and the vendor says, what are your specifications? That is a turn-off for me too. In the same way that it's like, well, I'm not an expert in RF amplifiers, actually. I don't know what my specs are. Help me figure that out. Yeah. So I think really maybe in some cases the very first step of educating the customer and responding to them is telling them this is the trade space that we're working in. These are the factors that drive cost. These are the factors that drive manufacturability. Because I think any decent engineer knows, hopefully, that he doesn't know everything about everything he's buying. And we see that in our business too. When we sell very complicated test and measurement equipment, and I would never say to a customer when they come to us, give me your specifications, because they don't know. It's our job to educate them on what the specs should be.
Yep. You could be hung up with a super, super crazy phase noise spec, and it's like, what signal are you using? Or what are your goals? You can define that phase noise spec and not blow their budget or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, you have to do it tactfully, right? You can't say, hey, man, your phase noise spec is crazy. Hey, can I ask what's driving that phase noise spec, right? Because that's really going to drive costs. I think it's interesting. There is like an emotional dance that has to happen there, right? Respect the engineer. Don't ask for direct access to the program manager. Make suggestions tactfully. So there's this whole emotional element to the sales process that maybe engineers, that's not really, a lot of times that's not the domain they live in.
You recently shared some interesting information with us that Triad has recently had an investment in your company. And, with our focus on SMB, small businesses, I'm not going to say everyone dreams of that, but it's certainly a part of it. You get in, you start out, you know something, your circumstances are such that you've decided to start your own company. Certainly in the back of your mind, there, for most everybody, is some sort of exit plan. Yes, everybody says, no, right now I'm only focused on what I'm going to do right now, and I am going to take care of these customers, and I am going to make sure that, Sean, recently, I want an RF recorder on every engineer's desk, right? I love that, okay? That's your That's your driver. But in the back of your mind, there's more. And that often involves a number of different things, right? The company could, God forbid, close. You could just say, hey, I'm done. I don't want to deal with it. Or you could sell it, or you could get investments, or what have you. But that comes with its own set of stories, challenges, and upsides. So tell us about your experience, if you will, and for those that have that in the back of their mind,
Sure.
what their company's journey is going to be like when they take that next step.
I feel like the best way I can put this is to put it to, first and foremost, if there's somebody that has that on their mind, to really think a lot about what they want out of it, because there's plenty of branches off of this decision tree. There's, if you're successful to a certain degree in our business, there are very, very long lasting companies out there, 25, 30, 40 years, as long as you do the right thing. And it may be, that may be what one prefers. Just keep rolling along, staying in that, on that success path. And that may be an option, or that may be a choice to make. But if there is interest in another company acquiring your company, yeah, a lot of end game 3, 4, 5 years from now thinking has to go on. You have to look at best case scenarios and worst case scenarios, and they have to align with the outcomes that you want. There could be a company that's a very, very good strategic fit on paper. See what the best case for that is. Assuming it happens, this is where you're going to be 3 years from now. But you also have to assume it's not going to be as easy. Maybe the company is 10 times larger than you, and they impose a drag on the way you did things that doesn't feel good and slows everything down. Suddenly 3 to 5 years doesn't look like a lot of time. So I guess it's the first really thought that has to cross your mind is, what is the end game for any acquisition or investment, and does it line up with the stupid cliche, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Yeah. And then look at the best case and look at the worst case and make sure you're good with both, because you can't predict the future. You don't have a crystal ball.
So what are some of the reasons, if you have a profitable company, right, and a work environment that you enjoy coming into every day and employees that you like to work with, what are the reasons that you might consider an acquisition?
There may be a type of owner that just says, hey, I've ground it out for 10 years. It is tiring, right? The beginning, getting that first batch of customers, right? Maybe the thought process is, all right, good. I want to reap the value of what I've sown right now, and you're done. That's one way. But I think, other reasons could be, at least in our industry, or I could speak of Triad RF a little bit to say there's an incremental jump that needs to happen to get to the next level of revenue and size.
So you hit a plateau,
whatever.
basically, without it.
Exactly. And you can cross that plateau, or you could climb that plateau, so to speak, by yourself, but it will involve a ton of risk in terms of financing, dumping even more money into the business, or extracting everything you can to jump to that level. Or you can have another company with a little more access, a little more money, more resources, help you do that. And then not all of that risk is on your shoulders. Right. So I think that's one of the reasons. to speak for our company in particular, and I can do this in general terms, to get to the next level in some certain defense programs at our current size, because I've watched the progression of other companies. And it's a formula, right? It's not rocket science as far as the basics are concerned. We would have needed maybe 5 to 7 more years to build that street, that credibility up, and to gain that access. Well, the company that acquired Triad has been doing that for 70 years. In the past 30, let's say, in those big programs. So we gain instant credibility. So that was a big value prop and access to those things. So it would have taken a much longer road, a much riskier road, much more expensive road than just partnering up with somebody that's in the same business that has already kind of run through that gauntlet.
And so is that because you now have access to individuals you didn't have access to before? Or is it because the customers only want to deal with bigger companies? Or is it both?
That's a good question. The access would have been a matter of time, but a long time, I think. We'd have to have demonstrated success in this program, then this program, then this program. But if you join up with a company that's already working at this level and then just brings you in, it's a much easier path.
I wonder if you would say it's kind of like buying brand, right? You sell a little bit of your company, and now you have access to new programs and a stronger brand. So I wonder if that's what you're doing, buying brand.
Yeah. There's a street cred part of the equation. Then there's also a overwhelming set of successes that our parent company has already achieved. And at least for us, there is also a very tight technology fit in terms of what we can do together. Another cliche, that whole 1 + 1 = 3. It's always possible doing that, but it still takes work. It doesn't happen naturally, or it just doesn't happen out of the blue where a customer would see, oh, wow, one company just got acquired by another company. Oh, their pieces are so interlinked, or their subcomponents are so relevant to each other. The customer's not going to make that connection. You have to do all the work to push that in front of them.
Right.
You have a different story to tell when you go in there, though, and I think it's a very important story to tell, and that is risk buy down, if you will, or risk sell down. We're going to be here. There is this inherent, wow, is Triad RF, is Coaxis, is Spectralab going to be here for me? The smaller you are, the newer you are, the more you have to scratch and claw up that mountain to justify it and say, yes, I'm going to be here. As soon as someone says, hey, they're worthy of acquisition or they're worthy of investment, instantly you have new credibility. Instantly they perceive that your finances are more sound. Instantly they perceive that you are going to be a lower risk. And therefore, since my reputation is on the line as an engineer specifying this thing, or as a program manager or supply chain professional acquiring this thing and putting my program success on the line, well, it's easier for me to do then, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't think that happens if your buyer is private equity, right? So I don't think you can buy brand if you're selling a piece of your company or a majority of your company to PE, because they don't have any name in the industry, right? Now, and maybe, I don't know if your company, if you had announced publicly that we've been acquired by public equity, is that a net positive or negative for the perception of financial soundness? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I've had a bit of experience with firms here and there, and I'm sure we all seen along a couple-year timeline via observation what happens to a given company. And I do think it's a mix of stories, right? PE's primary purpose is to, to put it bluntly, kind of house flip a company within a given time horizon. I mean, in the beginning, a lot of investment is had or is provided up front, and the company grows because the end intent is, capitalize on all the strengths of that company and sell it for some sort of multiple at the end of the period. They all work in different ways. Some only provide capital and guidance and let the place kind of take off on that trajectory. Others are interested in building a conglomerate. I'm aware of one in the marine electronics industry that really had like one of the biggest success stories in marine electronics, because they had a good plan of, hey, we have a really good foundation here. Let's acquire around it, and ended up, succeeding, very well there. But it is tough. I mean, I think each firm has a different personality, and they all have a lot of investments. You don't know where you stand in their level of attention, totem pole. It's definitely riskier on balance versus private company that does what you do or does something similar to what you do. And, it's a slow, sometimes these things take time, and they don't have an end horizon to say, well, you've got to expand by this amount. I would think private equity or a public company that's beholden to shareholders and growth, if you're pursuing something that's going to be awesome for 3 years from now, and now you're a part of a public company, the pressure to yield comes up much quicker than if a private company bought you, or maybe even a private equity firm.
Yeah. I wonder though if private equity is like almost an easier deal to close if it's like a sugar rush, I wonder if like with PE you've got the potential buyers lined up. If you've got the right EBITDA, you got probably have buyers lined up out the door, and you can probably close that deal in a few months, right? Whereas finding a buyer who is actually, I hate to use this word, but I will, synergistic with your company, that's probably a multi-year process, right? I mean, how long did it take you to find the right partner? And because it doesn't sound like you just closed this thing in a couple months.
No, ours was very unique. It took, I can't get into specifics, but it took shockingly longer than a normal transaction would take. And the positive part about that is we got to know each other, and that's key. The people you're going to be working with for the next, gosh knows how many years.
Were you on the hunt for somebody, or did they find you?
There was always an exit plan. I'm not the only owner of Triad, so there were other owners, and we have to balance all of our interests. But I would say that we were very fortunate because there was a revolving door at the time of private, public investment firms, etc., taking looks at Triad. The current acquisition came up, and the first at a glance observation was, oh wow, there's a good fit here. There's a good fit here for what we do, and I think you can build off of that.
So when you find that, when it feels like you have a good first date, does the conversation, what kind of, does the deal start including non-financial terms, like terms around, what are some of the non-financial things that are in a good deal?
I've got to just speak in very general terms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Based on what I've learned from various processes. My general understanding, having gone through this probably 3 to 4 times now, is anything is possible. Anything is writable in a contract. It's just the other party's willingness to accept it. You could write in a deal, we like shipping stuff in pink boxes, never touch that. And if they agree, they agree.
Yeah. I mean, I guess brand has to be one of those things, right? You have to have some
Yeah.
agreement on whether or not we're going to keep the logo or whatever it is, or the name or whatever, right? That's got to be a core thing.
Well, don't laugh. I know a company that, the pink boxes is a thing.
No way.
Absolutely 100%. I mean, you want to see their booth at a trade show, Jack. I'm telling you what, man.
Nice.
It is. They were ahead of Barbie's time by about, several years.
And you remember them. It still worked.
Oh, you noticed them. Dean Handrinos, thank you for being on with us. If there's anything you'd like to share with us at the end, I mean, one of the things we haven't even touched on is, any of the value added. But if there's anything you'd like to share to wrap this up, what would it be, Dean?
I'd like to kind of deliver a small message to anybody listening that has a good idea in RF or at any company to begin with. Just always look around, see what your current company is doing or see what other companies are doing. And if you have a better solution, it's not that, I'm not saying it's not easy, but it's not this mysterious, hugely difficult thing to build a prototype, to carry it out, to think about it. Like, if you really believe in it, and if, let's use an engineer at a firm, for example, if you really believe in it and you think, wow, the market could use this. I mean, if you're an engineer at a company, you're the market. So if it's worth pursuing, pursue it. And there's plenty of opportunity out there, especially in our industry. I think our industry is very innovative, and there's always people looking for something new. And if you have a value proposition in performance, price, size, and you have a good idea, just try your best to carry it out. Don't think there's some invisible wall you have to break through. Sometimes it's just making a couple calls and going forward.
I love that.
I love
Maybe
that
the wall
approach.
is just in your head.
Yeah.
It usually is, along with the voices. Just saying.
Plenty of those.
Sean, do you have any closing
I mean,
thoughts?
I think what I loved about today's conversation is I hear a lot of partners or a lot of companies, spout some nonsense about how we're partners with our customers, and a lot of times it's empty words. But what I heard Dean today talk about was the way he actually partners with his customers in the design process and delivers value before a check is written. And that's why I love that, Dean. I love that about your company. I love that you're actually delivering value before a deal is going to close. So I'd like to commend you on your commitment to that sales process and actually building real customer relationships and not just a marketing slogan.
Thank you, Sean and Ariel and Chuck and Sean. I mean, in the prior conversations, I think we're of very similar sensibilities. So it's cool to hang out with some very like-minded people.
Yeah,
here.
I loved it.
Yeah, Ariel, do you have any closing thoughts?
I think just favorite part of the talk was just you speaking to using your inner network from your employees, and so how marketing isn't just this outward thing, but it really does start within, with your own people and their own networks. And I think that's something that we lose sight of, is really just taking a look first of how we can use ourselves and expand on that. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that we don't say out loud a lot.
And if I may offer, the one thing I do not hear out of you, and I've been privileged to be on the fringe relationship with Triad for quite some time now.
Oh yeah, long-standing memory.
Yeah, what I just have never gotten the feeling that you guys are only out for number one. It is a measured, innovative, incremental improvement and growth in the industry, rather than we're just going to go out and just get rich quick and it's all about us. I've never gotten that inference, never had a feeling like that, and you've really reinforced that for me today. And if you do have that idea, as Dean suggested, if you can go into it with that approach, then trust first, people first, and But obviously with product innovation, I think it'll go a very, very long way. And I'm quite sure that Triad RF is a good example for you to follow. On behalf of Dean Handrinos from Triad RF, Sean Wallace and Ariel Carlson, I'm Chuck Coxett for the RF Frontiers podcast. Folks, dream big.